The market has been all about the AI industry for weeks, months, maybe even years, but there's a silent industry that's really starting to make a big comeback. Here to talk a little bit more about the biotech industry is Weiss Ratings technology editor Michael A. Robinson. Michael, you do a monthly newsletter all about this, right?
Right. We're talking about my monthly newsletter is called Disruptors and Dominators. And what we're looking at, and those are disruptive areas, which obviously biotech is a disruptive area, and especially when you put biotech and AI together, that's disruptive, or someone who's a dominant player in their field. And in fact, you mentioned I'm working on a special report. We'll talk a little bit about this one stock, but they dominate a particular type of biotech franchise. I mean, they totally own this segment of the market, and we talk a little bit more about the disease area. So they're using disruptive science, and they're also a dominant player in their sector, which is great to have those two together. I love the symmetry of that.
Yeah, and we are going to get to that information and those picks in just a little bit. But first, let's do a general overview of where the biotech industry is right now in the stock market. How is this industry trading right now?
It's had quite a comeback, but sort of very quietly, sort of almost under the radar, because as you mentioned, AI is getting a lot of attention, and specifically NVIDIA is like sucked all the oxygen out of the room, right? It's like all the market was like, oh, they're going to report on August 28th. They'll be like holding their breath, but how's it going to be? But biotech has really kind of come back. If you think about Bridget, why there was an overreaction. We went into post-COVID tailspin for a lot of these stocks. People felt there was no more upside left, that all the money that could be made was sort of like biotech at that time, sort of like going out for the low-hanging fruit. But they've made quite a bit of comeback. All results oriented, of course. Some of these guys have been really just killing it with earnings and sales growth. And so a couple of names that pop out at me is Arcutis Biotherapeutics, and they had peak gains recently of 212%, which is, Apple investors would like to have that in the same amount of time, right? Speaking as
Right.
an Apple investor. And then the other one was Janix, and this one's up like almost 275% for its peak gains, and just in a very short amount of time. So what we've seen is that biotech kind of went like this, and some of these leaders have just really broken out. And that's like a bunch of years of the S&P gains all in one, all in one. And so what's been going on behind the scenes, and I think not that many investors really realize what's going on, but the FDA has a program. Now, let me use a metaphor. You know what a first class passenger is at an airport, right? They
Right.
get front of the line, they get the good seats, they get the good drinks, they get the best food, they get the best service. The FDA is doing something similar because it wants us, the Americans, to be healthier, and a lot of these drugs, they want to get them faster to market. So what they do is they give these companies what amounts to a first class ticket. They give them special treatment. They do what they can to encourage them. And what's really fascinating from an investment standpoint is I actually couldn't believe this. I had a team go through this. We spent quite a bit of time going through all of the data. 97% of the time, it's almost like pretty close to 100%, the stock goes up when they get this. And the FDA doesn't say anything. It's just a very quiet signal. FDA doesn't put out a press release. The companies typically put out a press release, and then when they do that, their stocks can go up pretty dramatically. One was up for 845% in the first 6 months after it got this first class ticket, and another one. I want to give you the accurate data here. One of them was up 119% 2 days.
Wow.
What is that? 15 years the S&P return or something like that in 2 days. That's pretty amazing.
It's incredible. I want to talk about that a little bit about the biotech industry for investors. If you are getting in on any biotech stock, I feel like it is all a reaction to FDA approval, advancements or announcements in a new breakthrough, or even just a news event. I feel like this industry and this sector specifically are really impacted by these potentially volatile announcements.
Yeah, it is true. You don't want to be on the receiving end of a FDA says no. That hurts the stock. And so what we're always looking for as investors is that we want the deck stacked in our favor. So that's why we're looking at companies that have a really good relationship with the FDA and have a good track record of getting these things approved. And in fact, I've just prepared a special report on this very topic, and it looks at the signal that we've been talking about, where 97% of the time the stocks go up. There's no such thing as a sure thing in investing, but with a 97% win rate, that's as close as you're going to get to doing that. And so that's one of the things we want, that we monitor. Um, and so it's three companies in particular that I think kind of exemplify that. If you'd like, I can kind of give you some of the high points of each one of these players, and kind of what makes them so exciting.
Yeah, let's see some examples of what this looks like. Because I think for investors, the real value comes in. They want to take advantage of that 800% growth, but they need to get in before it happens. Uh,
Right.
are these stocks kind of examples of that?
Well, what they are examples of is these are all three of these players. Well, one's a moonshot. One's a low price moonshot stock. We like, I like the moonshot stocks. You don't bet the farm on them. I'll get to that in a second. But one of them is, I think, gets to your point, and I think it does it very well. This company has the best of both worlds. So they have a lot of experimental science, stuff in the gene therapy, but they also have a lot of drugs on the market right now that are cash cows. They basically own the cystic fibrosis market. They have several drugs out there right now generating, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue every year. And so we got the stability, but then they also have joint ventures where they're working with gene therapy. Again, you're going in and fixing things at the genetic level so that you don't have to keep taking drugs and have to have chemotherapy or operations, or a series of both. And the first two that they have going on right now is, one has to deal with sickle cell anemia. You don't want that. It's a genetically related disease. It affects about 100,000 people in the United States at any point in time, often fatal. So these guys have a therapy out for that. And the other one that they have, which is a larger patient population, is type 1 diabetes. And that affects around just shy of, it's like around 3.8 million. So just shy of 4 million people. So that's a pretty large uh, patient population. And this company, and this is the other thing we're looking for, because we have our moonshot stock, but you have something very stable here, that these guys have done a really good job of growing earnings faster than sales. So, as somebody who analyzes technology investments all day, I really like to see that. So what that tells me is a very efficient firm. It tells me it's an extremely well-run firm. It tells me that the drugs that are on the market are really generating a lot of cash that falls to the bottom line. With investors, that's what we want. And so they've been growing their earnings. The earnings over the last 3 years have averaged, per share profits have grown 30% a year on average over the last 3 years. But even better, Bridget, is that they're growing their earnings 5 times faster than sales. Man, I want that stock. I mean, that's
That's
something I get both. I get stability, got a lot of drugs on the market. They've got 18 drugs in their pipeline. They've got these joint ventures going on in gene therapy. So that's kind of a number one right there. Like, as I said, I love the double play here. It's a twofer. We get cutting edge science, but if something doesn't go right, it's not going to bring the firm down. They've got a really good moat for us as investors. They can take a flyer and invest, hundreds of millions of dollars potentially if they want to, and it's not going to kill them if the thing doesn't eventually pay out. But what they're doing is they're joint venturing with stuff that they can get on the market right away, or as fast as possible.
That sounds like a great company and a great first stock pick in the biotech industry for those looking for a pretty solid stock to get into this industry. What's a second stock that you're looking at in the biotech sector?
It's also a larger stock. We're looking at quality. That the first two are quality plays, because I'll talk about the moonshot in a second. But one of the things I really like about these guys is that they have. We talked about AI and the marriage of AI and biotech. They actually have a joint venture going on with Microsoft. They're using Microsoft's AI model, or their AI platform, to help accelerate drug discovery. And they've also moved into some interesting areas of cutting edge science. They recently struck a deal with a company called Voyager Therapeutics. And this pact covers Huntington's disease and muscular dystrophy, spinal muscular dystrophy. You don't want either one of these diseases. They're bad news. All right. but this could be worth $1.2 billion in the next few years in extra sales. So again, what we have is an established player that's joining forces with somebody a little bit more on the cutting edge, and we as investors get access to the cutting edge science, but without we're not betting the farm on that like a lot of these smaller biotech companies do. These guys have been around for a long time, and they're on pace to double their earnings, Bridget, in the next 3 years. So that's something I like to see. I like to see an earnings double. It tells me, kind of where we're going to be 3 years, 6 years if they keep that pace up. Doubling your earnings every 3 years or so is pretty good.
That also sounds like a great biotech stock, but I do notice you haven't named it yet. How can people find out what you're talking about here?
Well, you have to get a copy of my special report, and the title of it is The Next FDA Signal: How to Profit Off of First-Class Drugs. And we lay all this stuff out in that report.
I know you wanted to preview one more of
I
the
do. I
stocks that's
do.
going to be in that report, and this one's kind of more of a long shot.
Right. I mean, this is a stock that trades under $10 a share, and so it's not yet investor grade. So what that means is that you're not going to find a lot of institutional investors backing this stock. It's going to be mostly smaller players. With $460 million market cap, it's small for a lot of even hedge funds. It's a little bit on the small side. But what's really interesting about this, what makes this there's two things really, is they're involved in this cutting edge science we've been talking about here today, Bridget, with genetic therapy and looking at solving disease at the genetic level. But these guys have a CEO who used to be at Biogen. Biogen is a major player in the industry and has been for quite some time now. And what's interesting about that is he was there when they were building out their franchise. He was involved in a number of drugs that made it to market. So he's got a track record of getting drugs to market. And then what's also interesting, just from a almost an intuitive standpoint, the company, when he was at Biogen, it's now a $33 billion market cap company. So it's at the upper end of the mid cap. His cap right now is $460 million, but if he just got to 10% of Biogen's market cap, you'd go from, let's call it 450 to make the math easy, 450 million to about 3.3. So let's just say 450 to 3.5 billion. That's a pretty substantial increase, and that's why I think it defines a moonshot stock. If he lives up to just 10% of the potential that he helped bring to Biogen, we could see some pretty big move in the market cap, which the stock has to follow the market cap, right? The two are closely interrelated. So just getting that up there is going to push the stock price up. And this is one that you call it a moonshot. I think this is one that, I always tell people the same thing on a play like this. Shouldn't put in more than you can afford to lose. And personally, I like having some moonshots in there. It's an exciting way to do it, and you don't bet the farm.
Yeah, that's some great investment advice, Michael. And lots of interesting biotech stocks to look into. I know our viewers, I'm sure, are interested to hear what those are. Again, we will link to Michael and Weiss Ratings report that will be coming out soon, naming some of those stocks he just previewed for us. Michael, thank you again for this great conversation on biotech stocks and the industry as a whole. We'll continue to follow this and much more right here on MarketBeat. Happy investing.